My name is Maria Norman, and I'm an artist, filmmaker, drag performer, costume maker, priestess of nature, and independent researcher. I research subjects and persons from the art, dance, and entertainment world of the so-called La Belle Époque, the time span roughly between the years 1871 to 1914. I will present to you all the info I've been able to track down on Grille de Go, the forgotten Moulin Rouge dancer and first can-can school teacher. Info online says that she was born as Lucienne Beuse. This is apparently not true, as a source of mine says the name Lucienne was made up by La Goule's grandson, who wrote a book on her. So the birth name of this lady is as of present not known to me. And her birth year and early years are also, well, not known to me, they're unknown. She was likely born in the 1860s, and according to a newspaper who published her memoirs, she was born and raised in Montmartre. But we must keep in mind that such memoirs could also be fabricated. And some sources says that she was a former school teacher who somehow got into dancing professionally, as well as choreographing and teaching dance. And other sources says that she was originally a dressmaker. She herself writes in an article in Gilles Blas Illustré, quote, "When I worked at a milliner shop, I'd quickly run off to watch the women dance at balls, and it attracted me so much so that the day I started dancing for the first time, I left the milliner and devoted myself entirely to my art." End quote. Milliner shops were one of many places which didn't always employ girls full time and all year, which led to many workers having to pursue sex work in order to make ends meet. That doesn't mean that this happened to her, but it was very common. She first appears in records under the stage name Grille de Go, together with her dance partner La Goulue, around the year 1884. Her stage name means sewer or gutter grate. A grid or a grate which stops street garbage from entering the sewers. And it's the same word as the word grill, because the food that you grill is placed on a metal grid. The polemicist Henri Roquefort nicknamed her this because she apparently had space between her teeth, making them look like a grate. And her two front teeth were apparently rabbit-like, and she might even have had the nickname Rabbit. Some sources says that she was even missing teeth, but like this photo of her tells a different story. And I don't even see that there's that much space between her teeth. In her newspaper memoir, she writes that since her parents didn't have a bottle for her when she was a baby, they gave her an old seasoned pipe to suckle. Hence the spacing between her teeth and their salmon color. It's not sure if this memoir of hers is indeed written by her, and how true it actually is. It was the older dancer Céleste Mogador who introduced La Goulue to Grille. Grille had the first school of can-can. She taught the dance to La Goulue, and they started performing together. I do not know where this school was and in what form it was. Grille and La Goulue, they contrasted each other. A brunette and a blonde, one modest, one vulgar. Grille with her smiling grin, and La Goulue who never smiled, at least not on camera. Grille and La Goulue danced the quadrille réaliste, also known as quadrille naturaliste. It was the can-can of its day, but at this time it was a couple's dance, where two couples met and battle danced each other. It did include the characteristic high kicks. Grille and La Goulue teamed up with two men, Valentin La Dessaussée and a man named Guy Bollard. She also danced with fellow dancer and friend Rayon d'Or, and the two male dancers Guy Bollard and Vol au Vent. But we need to stop for a moment, because look at this dress. I've seen the above photo so many times that over the past 22 years, and I've never been really able to make out what the pattern on the dress is. But then I found these two other images who are in higher resolution, and it's visible what is on her breasts. It's great! Miss Sewers, Grate de Go, is wearing a dress which has sewer grates on the breasts. This is actually a bit too cool and mind-blowing, to be honest. Because it reminds me of how performers in this era would, wear some sort of trademark connected to their name, wear this symbol on their costumes, like female impersonator John Lind, who wore his trademark, the question mark, on his chest. And this is a tradition which is still going strong, of course, and especially in the drag world. And another note on why it's extra interesting that Grille de Go is wearing grates, sewer grates, on her breasts. It's because in the 19th century, the sewer system and the regulated prostitution system was linked to one another, because it was seen as a necessary evil to protect the city from filth. So Miss Sewers, Grille de Go, is wearing something which is a nod to her nickname, but also perhaps with intent linking her risque dancing to the regulated sex trade, which it was a part of. But she's doing this in a very flippant or ironic and funny way. Grille de Go was depicted by the artist Toulouse-Lautrec, but not as far as much as her partner, La Goulue. In fact, I have struggled to find representations of her in his artworks. But she does appear alongside La Goulue in this picture. The quadrille of the chair of Louis XIII at Élysée Montmartre. The chair in question was at Aristide Bruant's cabaret Le Militon. He had set up this cabaret in the same location as the legendary Chat Noir. But the owner of Chat Noir, Sally, he wanted his chair back, but Bruant said no. He did, however, hang it up near the cabaret door and composed a song about it. Why does this chair have a quadrille dance? I don't know. It's perhaps an in-joke. Grille and La Goule's dance partners in this picture is perhaps Valentin and Guy Bollard. The kneeling man is waiting for Grille to kick the hat off his head. It's a famous dance move. And the man with his back turned to them is a fellow named Père la Pudeur, or nicknamed Father Prude. His task was to make sure that the line of moral decency wasn't crossed. He is said to have separated same-sex couples and to have made sure that the ladies' pantalons were closed all the way across the groin by personally shutting them with safety pins. This is another Toulouse-Lautrec painting which, likely depicts Grille. This must be her, with her back towards us, in a white dress with a black ribbon. The center focus of the image is La Goulue, Toulouse-Lautrec's favorite, and it's from the dance hall Élysée Montmartre in the year 1888. During the years 1884 to 1889, Grille and La Goulue danced at venues such as Alcazar and Élysée-Montmartre. One time in 1885, when they danced at Alcazar, it led them to being accused in court of moral indecency. They were not charged. In 1886, they get offers from an impresario from New York, but they stay in Paris since Grille has gotten a taste for theatre after her debut in a dramatic play at Alcazar de Hiver. On October 6th, 1889, the impresarios Charles Seidler and Joseph Euler opened the Moulin Rouge on Place Blanche. Seidler had recruited many of the dancers from the rival venue Élysée-Montmartre, including Grille. This is a photo of the first dance troupe of the Moulin Rouge. And one of them must be her, but I haven't been able to pin down who. The most appreciated of the acts from the premiere was the quadrille of Grille and La Goulue. Moulin Rouge was a pleasure palace for everyone, for all of society. Rich and poor rubbed shoulders and could amuse themselves with entertainment on several different stages. The success was enormous. It became an instant tourist attraction, a must-do while in Paris. This is a letter from Grille to her boss Seidler. She writes that she is arriving in Paris on Monday evening, and that she can dance on Tuesday if that's convenient. Grille and some of the women from the Moulin Rouge posed for nude photographs. And these photographs were distributed at different locations, under the table for a fee. But this was actually illegal, yet it was also a way to market these celebrities. And these photos give me a mixed feeling as to how consensual was this photographing. It's of course impossible to know. Some of their faces look discontent, but others are happily posing. In the newspaper memoir of Grille, an unreliable yet still a source, she writes that La Goulue did her sex work in one of the Maisons de Tolérance, a brothel, but that Grille herself preferred to give her graphic consultations at home. Now let us take some moments to look at some photographs of Grille. It looks like these were taken on 2 occasions, but otherwise they're very similar. And I wonder how old she was in these photos. She could be as young as 20 or even younger, but yeah, she's definitely not yet 30. But here she looks like she's in different ages, and she's obviously wearing a wig in the very right one, where she looks, maybe some years older than in the others. And this one is one of my favorites because she looks so triumphant and funny. My other favorite is, of course, the one with the sewer grate dress. And here's some of her and her friend and colleague La Goulue. They must be something in 20s, 20 years old. And I think the clothing makes them look a bit older. But teenagers and young adults, they wore this style of clothing in the 1890s. We think of pantaloons being sported by our great-grandmothers, but this is them, sort of. One rather vague source states that one evening in 1890, Grille was for some reason missing from the quadrille, and her place was filled by Jane Avril, who became a famous dancer and a subject and friend of Toulouse-Lautrec. In 1890, Grille taught the can-can to comedienne Réjane for her role in the play Ma Cousine. The training took 2 weeks, and Réjane's performance was celebrated and remembered for many years thereafter. Some sources later writes that Réjane was performing a parody of Grille's dancing, but others write that it was a perfectly believable Shahoot/Can-Can dance performance. It anyway made people want to take dance lessons from Grille. Here are her own words on teaching from the paper Gil Blas Illustré. Quote, I don't give lessons at home. That would be inconvenient. I go into town. I'm a teacher without having been a student. That is funny. And I'd love nothing more than to be a teacher. End quote. Grille's dancing style was described as ethereal, delicate, a childish virtuosity whose restraint contrasted the sensuality of La Goulue. Here are some of her own words from Gil Blas Illustré on the can-can, also known as the Shahoot, and on clothing. Quote, to dance Shahoot well, one must, in my humble opinion, display a great deal of grace. Then you must have pretty underwear. That is essential. Without neat underwear, there's no fuss. In my opinion, I prefer white underwear, long petticoats trimmed with beautiful lace, and very full pants. The stockings must be black silk, to better stand out against the white background. Black satin shoes. It should be added, however, that I never dance without pinning the bottom of my pants to my garters. Women who show their flesh disgust me. End quote. That last sentence does make me wonder if she did actually consent to those nude photos. Or perhaps she didn't mind that kind of nudity, but wanted the dance floor free from flesh. Yeah, I really hope that she did mean that she didn't like flesh being shown during dancing, because she is showing some flesh in these photos. And I hope I'm not doing her some sort of posthumous disservice by showing them, even censored. Grille held herself aloof from the disorderliness of her companions. Generally modest, she could kick a man's hat off his head as saucily as anyone. She could invent infinite variations on an orchestral theme, always keeping in perfect time to the music. She avoided a too lavish display of nakedness, and she was never vulgar. She is described as one of Montmartre's most picturesque characters. Grille is said to have made her clothes herself, and quote, her style was conventional, without ostentation, discreet, perhaps even a little dull. Was she pretty? No, but she was amiable, kind, good-natured, and while La Goule's language was often foul, the speech of Grille de Goix was always refreshingly decent. End quote. Grille looked like a bourgeoise lady out for a good time. In 1891, she's called in to witness in a rather amusing trial when her friend and fellow dancer Rayon is accused of not paying the agreed price for a piece of furniture, which led to the seller seizing a chair and the dog Leda from Rayon's place as compensation. The dog was given by Grille to Rayon d'Or's maid, Mademoiselle Elise Hosepide. In court, Grille states that her occupation is dance teacher. She is described in one article covering the trial. Quote, she wears a rather thick veil, which hides her elegant and delicate face. She is dressed like a peaceful little bourgeoise. It is also said that Miss has a pronounced taste for modest attire. A small black hood, a black dress, and a long grey coat. End quote. Rayon d'Or was sentenced to pay the lady for the furniture. And the most important question isn't answered. What happened to the dog? Did the maid get it back? We will never know. We also don't know what kind of dog it was. I did find this photo where Rayon and her dance partner Sauterelle is accompanied by a dog. Could that be the actual dog? There's so many mysteries surrounding these ladies. I guess we will never know. Why didn't Toulouse-Lautrec depict Grille more times? No one knows. Speculation. Perhaps she wasn't as fun to him as La Goulue, who revelled in the inappropriate, which Toulouse-Lautrec enjoyed. Or she wasn't as fascinatingly strange as dancer Jane Avril, whom Lautrec felt affinity for. And what about her relation to La Goulue? There is no record of a fight between them, but once in the Moulin Rouge, La Goule's star rises and Grille's doesn't reach the same high level, yet she remains a celebrated dancer. La Goulue leaves the Moulin in 1895, and Grille remains a returning act. Towards the second half of the 1890s, Grille is described as being one of few from the original Moulin Rouge who was still performing. And here's a theory, recently put forth by scholar Leslie Choquette. The photo on the right is from a series depicting the female clown Xiao Cao, but actually is a photo of Grille. Or rather, Grille de Go and Xiao Cao are the same person. I, who have been studying these people for the past 22 years, is quite mind blown. I will have to dig deeper into this in the upcoming lecture about Xiao Cao. I will say it's very plausible for a Moulin Rouge performer to use several stage names for different roles. Or, here's my theory, Xiao Cao was a role. It was danced or performed by different women. But if Grille and Xiao Cao are the same person, it does mean that Toulouse-Lautrec did portray her, but in the role of a clown. In an article from 1896 concerning the death of aging author Arsène Houssaye, it states that Miss Grille de Go curtsied to this dandy. The meaning seems to be that she was his mistress. In the book Le Pavillon de Fantômes, Souvenir, I found this short note. General de B. ... protector of Grille de Go. General de who? I don't know. And yeah, protector meaning, well, that it's a relation where he paid her expenses. And also I've read that the man who gave Grille her nickname, Henri Rochefort, was her boyfriend at the time. Her protector. That is very likely, indeed. And here we go again. Because look what I found. It's a photo of Grille. And it was used to make a kind of group collage photo that I'm about to show you. This one, which I've been staring at for like the past 15 years or so, wondering if I will ever get to identify all of them. And a stereo photo with names of them made this possible. And our girl Grille, she's the second from the right. And actually, I would have never guessed that this is her, actually, unless I had seen the previous photo where I can see her facial features in more detail. Here's another photo from the same occasion. And she just looks so different on these ones. She looks cute and mischievous, but just different. It seems that Grille and her colleagues were captured on film in 1896. It says, quote, "Then it was the cinematograph's turn, showing us a beer drinker consulting the phone book. Then we witnessed the antics of Grille and her lustful companions at the Moulin Rouge. Belly dancing in Tunis, the arrival of a train, etc., etc. All these scenes received rounds of applause." This film likely hasn't survived. I've never heard of it. And the only film clip of Moulin Rouge performers which I am aware of is of a group who might have performed under the name Le Barrissonnerie. The young Pablo Picasso was such a fan of Toulouse-Lautrec that his early style took inspiration to the point that when he showed new work to his friends, they said, "Nice try, but it's still too much Lautrec." He did do a drawing of Grille and some of the other dancers for the smutty magazine Fro Fro. In 1905, the comedian Brasseur is depicted imitating Grille. This indicates that her fame was still going in the early 1900s. Her name ceases to appear in articles around 1903. Thereafter, I've only found the following. In the book Houses of Pleasure and Parisian Distractions from 1909, it's noted that Grille has had enough of her profession. She's married and is, as they say, as good a wife as she is a mother. A newspaper writes in 1912 about new grates on the vents for the sewers, and that it will remind us of a heroine from the Moulin Rouge, the hilarious Grille. Her legacy did live on. And the satirical magazine Fantasio writes in an article about what happened to former Moulin Rouge stars on 1st of May 1915, quote, "Grille has settled down. She leads a bourgeois life in Paris, even cooking. Married, yes ma'am. She devotes herself to her husband's joy. When spring comes, the former Grille flees the urban dust for the calm atmosphere of the fields. Like Judic, she raises poultry, but she still hates rabbits." End quote. Grille runs a boarding house for less fortunate artists on the other side of the Butte, the Montmartre Hill. Article from 1918. And there are mentions of her working as a concierge, a caretaker of a residential building, after her dancing career. But either that's not true, or that she ran this boarding house and thereafter worked as a concierge. Regarding her death year, Henri Perrechau's definitive biography of Toulouse-Lautrec has all his subjects' death years, and it says that Grille died in 1929. However, Goulue is interviewed in 1923, and she mentions Grille and the fact that she's dead. But also, the humorist magazine Le Sourire writes in 1926, "Grille is still a concierge on Pigalle Street or Rochefoucauld Street in Montmartre, the Pigalle Montmartre district." If that is correct, it means that she spent the majority of her life in or around the Montmartre district. So summing up, Grille was perhaps born in Montmartre, and she was not named Lucienne Beuze. She got her nickname from her teeth or the space between them, since they resembled a sewer grate. She might have been a milliner, a seamstress, or a school teacher. Her debut was around 1884 with dance partner Goulue, whom she also taught the can/chahout to. And her trademark was her bourgeois clothing, her prominent front teeth, and her smile. She danced with partners Valentin Ladessoucet, Guy Bollard, Louis Dore, Volavant, and others. And she was the first to teach the can to persons such as actress Réjane. She danced at many of the prominent venues of her time, and she danced at the Moulin Rouge from around 1889 to even past 1900, probably. She might have married, she might have had children, she might have ended up as a concierge, or that she ran a boarding house for less fortunate artists, and she might have died in 1929. That was all I had on this subject, although I'm sure there's always more to say and other sources to consult. I did my best to get all the facts right and to tell an interesting story. Et malheureusement, je ne parle pas français. Je suis désolée.